one of the infamous stories about Frankie Laine regards the magnificent
Zulu.
Zulu. First time I ever heard the phrase $1 million body and a 10-cent brain was used in reference to the magnificent Zulu. And that pretty much sums the guy up. He was, 6'5",
Yep.
280, built like you couldn't believe, couldn't wrestle a lick. And he was a little difficult to get along with sometimes, but I think you could probably say the same thing about Cowboy Frankie Laine.
Yep.
Not everybody liked Frankie Laine. He was a little bit controversial. He, didn't really care what people thought about him, and if he didn't like you, he didn't have time for you. And he didn't like a lot of people. Happened to like me for some reason, which was always cool. But one night, the Frankie Laine and Zulu traveled from Toledo, where both were staying at that point in time, to Canton, Ohio. They both had a match, not against each other, against another opponent. Later on in the evening, Cowboy Frankie Laine was standing outside of the dressing room in Canton watching a match go on in the ring. And apparently there had been a little friction between the two of them. And from what I hear, Frankie liked to get his digs in on Zulu endlessly, to the point where Zulu became enraged, didn't say anything, but came up behind Frankie Laine, literally with a lead pipe, and cracked his skull.
Yep.
Down he went. They called the ambulance. The ambulance took Frankie away, took him to the hospital. After the show was over, Jack Kane and I had come down from the office. Jack Kane was the booker, the man responsible for the talent for the Sheep at that point in time. And Jack says, we got to go to the hospital. We got to check on Frankie. We got to take him his belongings, his suitcase. Zulu, by that time, had left. Zulu had left the building and literally had left the territory. Nobody ever saw him here again. He was history, and probably still have a warrant out for him. But Jack and I went to the hospital. We were the only two who went to the hospital to see Frankie and check on him. When they finally let us in, Frankie was conscious. He was very calm. He said, "Who did it?" And I said, "Well, it was Zulu." And he said, "Yeah, it doesn't surprise me." He said, "He's a so-and-so," and went on a little bit. And Frankie said, "I need you to call my girlfriend for me. Let her know what happened." So, geez. So I got that job, calling her. And she said, "Who did it?" And I said, "Zulu." And she says, "I knew it." They just could not keep off of each other's backs. Frankie was out for months after that. Eventually came back. As I said, Zulu was never heard from in this area again. He turned up a few places, and the result was the same. He just could not wrestle.
Well, he had the body, for it. He was a big bodybuilder, great physique. But like you said, promoters would bring him into a territory. I know he went down to Georgia and worked for Ann Gunkel's group and with Thunderbolt Patterson. And, just couldn't do a lick.
Yeah.
They couldn't do a thing with him.
And his attitude wasn't great either. He was pretty much a prima donna.
Yeah, and then he went out to California,
Right.
where he changed his name from the Magnificent Zulu to Ali Pasha.
Right, yeah.
And, lasted a little bit there, big presence, tried to make him a main eventer, but, in the end, he couldn't wrestle a lick.
Yeah, he was the kind of guy you just had to cut your losses on at some point in time. He was, great to look at, but after people see him once, what are you going to follow up with?
Yeah, back in the early 2000s, I got word that, when I was out in LA, just on vacation, I heard that Zulu was, his name was really Ron Pope,
Right.
Was working as security at a strip club by the LA airport. And also, somebody said that he was driving a taxi cab. So maybe he did better driving than he did wrestling. That's all I got to say.